what we were discussing is about how to write down the SBDF notation, electron configuration, and ion. And we have discussed the cation here. Now it's time for us to discuss an anion. What is the rule about an anion? It says you're going to just add electron following the rules of the electron configuration. As you were writing your electron configuration, you're following certain rules. You're going to follow the same rules to write down the electron configuration for an anion. So actually, the electron configuration for chlorine, if I go by the electron configuration of chlorine as an atom, right? So that is going to be C. No, sorry, not C. That's gonna be, just wipe this out. So that's going to be actually Cl negative that we are interested in, but actually we know that for Cl is 1s2, and then we know that it is 2s2, and then it is 2p6, okay, and then 3s2, and then 3p5. So if another electron is coming in, that's going to go into the 3p5. So that's going to be, rest of the electron configuration is going to be the same. We're going to write down 3s2 and then 3p6. See, what I was trying to tell you guys earlier is that it's about the closed shell. Okay, once the neutral atoms become ions, they go for a closed shell. Okay, and now this valence shell is closed. Closed means it has 8 electrons in it, in total 8 electrons, and that's closed. If we discuss the example of sodium here, let's say if we discuss the example of sodium, and sodium is going to go for Na plus, and I know that it's 11 electrons. So if we write down the electron configuration for sodium, then it is going to go like this. Okay, it is going to be 1s2, going to be 2s2, and then it's going to be 2p6, and then 3s1. Correct? So that's the electron configuration of a neutral, sodium neutral. Okay, but if we write down the Na plus, see what's going on. That's going to go as one, sorry, um, erase that part. So that's going to be 1s2, 2s2, and then that's going to be 2p6, and that's gone because now it is Na plus, right? So see, this is closed shell again. So they become ion because they're going to go for the closed shell. Closed shell means 8 electrons in the outermost shell. And that's why, because that's more stable, energetically more stable, that's why they all become ions because of this fact. Okay, chlorine got its closed shell because when it becomes Cl negative, it gets one more electron in its closed shell at the 3 energy level 3. It's the closed shell at energy level 2 when it just loses this one electron from energy level 3. So then the next concept is about the atomic radii. Okay, what is atomic radii? So there's no physical boundary of an atom. We know that central part. If you look at an atom, then this is an atom's nucleus. Let's say the hardest parts or the core of an atom is its nucleus, which is protons and electrons, right? And then nucleus is proton and neutron, and then electrons are all around moving like this negative particles. So there's no physical boundary. So it means it's very difficult to find out the radii of an atomic of an atom. So it is obtained by dividing the distance between the two nuclei of two neighboring atoms when they have and this is the example here is it's talking about the diatomic bromine. That's going to be Br2. It means two bromines are attached with each other, right? What I was trying to say here, it's going to be Br2, diatomic bromine. That looks like that because it is Br bonded with Br. So when they are bonded with each other, that's what they're saying. The obtained by the atomic radii is obtained by dividing the distance between two nuclei of two neighboring atoms. Okay, that's how when they get that, they're gonna do they get the distance from one center to another center because that's the core nucleus. They can get the distance from one nucleus to another nucleus, right? That's what they are saying, nuclei of two neighboring atoms, and then divide it into half, and that's gonna be the radii. Okay, so this is the distance from one nuclei to another nuclei, and then covalent radius is half of that. Okay, so that's how they get the atomic radii. So what we are now going to discuss is about the trends on the periodic table. So what happens, and that these trends, make sure that these trends are we are talking about only for the main group elements. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 groups, which are the main groups on your periodic table. So the periodic trends that we are talking about is we're going to go step by step. So the one of the property of an atom that we have been discussing is atomic radii. So what is the trend of the atomic radii on the periodic table? Because you know that if you go down to the group or if you go across the period, certain properties are um, uh, going to be similar in all these atoms. Either they are in the period or they are in the group, right? So, but while we talk about the group, they are more similar to each other in their properties. Okay. So periodic trends in atomic radii, if you look at this, that what is happening to the atomic radii if you go down into the column. Definitely, if you see that the atomic radii is increasing, if you go down to the column, if you go across the table, the general trend is that the atomic radii is going to increase. So you go down, you see that the atomic radii is increasing, and if you go across the period, you're going to see that it's a general trend that the atomic radii is going to decrease. Why? As n increases, the valence electrons are farther from the nucleus. Okay, so you see that the total number of electrons are actually increasing. You go from lithium to sodium to potassium to rubidium to cesium. What's going on in terms of their total number of electrons? The total number of electrons are definitely increasing. And that's a significant increase of number of electrons that we were looking at earlier. Okay, so if we were looking at that earlier, and if you're going to go by that, then we will understand what I'm trying to, and then definitely will understand what I'm trying to say. So so if we are looking at this thing here, then it looks fine to me. Okay, so atomic radius decreases across the period, and atomic radius increases as you go down into the column due to the effective nuclear charge. Okay, what is the effective nuclear charge? We'll discuss it later on, but just remember that if you go down into the column, there is a significant change in the number of electrons compared to you go across the period. So you go across the period, you know this is proton number 11, then magnesium is 12, and then you go jump onto to this main group 3, then you're going to look at the number of atoms. There's not much change going from here to here in the total number of electrons. But if you go from top to the bottom, the total number of electrons in an atom are going to be significantly higher. Okay, so the more the electrons are, the farthest will be the valence electrons from the nucleus, and that's where the nucleus is not going to experience a lot of attraction, because in the nucleus you have protons, and protons are not going to be attracted a lot by the valence electrons, because the valence electrons are now farthest from the center. So when they are farthest, it's already going to give a larger radii to the atom. So that's how it is. So what is effective nuclear charge then? When we talk about effective nuclear charge, we're going to symbolize it by Z effective. Z effective, we usually call it Z effective, okay? So the charge of the nucleus that is felt by the valence electrons after accounting for screening by the core electrons. That's what we call the shielding effect. So if you look at, let's say this is your, not here, let's use this area. Let's say this is your nucleus, okay? And around the nucleus, when you look at this, okay, that is not working. If you look at this, I can use this area, I think. Okay. So this is, let's say if this is the, okay, that is also not working. What the, so this is, what is the problem? So this is the like nucleus. And then if you look at these rounds around the nucleus, and that's represent the presence of the electrons here, presence of the electrons here. And as we go farthest from the, then there is another electron here. Okay, so as you go farther, as you go far from the nucleus here, you're going to see that between this electron and between this nucleus, sometimes because electrons are moving, that sometimes this electron gonna come here in between this valence electron and uh, this nucleus here. So nucleus has plus plus, right? And this electron has negative. So this, the attraction between the two, this is what they are talking about, is going to be reduced. Okay, and how it's going to be reduced? Because there's going to be a shielding effect by the electrons in between. That's what we call that the core electrons are playing their role. Okay, they are screening. Screening is going to be the phenomena by the core electrons that reduces the interaction between the nucleus, where the positive charge is, to the electron which is in the outermost shell. So what's the charge of the nucleus that is felt by the valence electron after accounting from screening by the core? So we can calculate that. Okay, so we can calculate that charge, and that's going to be called as the effective charge. How much charge is being felt? Okay, how much charge is being felt by the valence electrons uh, from the nucleus by reducing or by taking care of the shielding effect by the core electrons. So Z effective is that thing. Okay, so Z effective is actually is equals to the number of protons. Z is the number of proton minus the number of core electrons. What we see here as a general trend is that Z effective increases going left to right across a row. So if you are going like in your periodic table, if you are in the periodic table and you're moving across the period like this, what happens that the Z effective increases. Why? Because the number of electrons are not going to change significantly. So that's going to have that's going to have a large value for the Z effective. And that's what we say it's increasing, okay, going to the left, going from left to the right across the row. The large effective nuclear charge pulls the valence electrons closer to the nucleus. And that's where, when there is a large Z effective, it means nucleus is attracting electrons more towards it. So they're going to come pretty close to each other. It's going to it's going to shrink even more, okay, in its size. And that's why when we talk about radii and we talk about the trend, it says atomic radii decreases as you go across the period, means from left to right. So what is going on into this trend when you go from left to right is about the Z effective, because Z effective is increasing going from left to right. Z effective is decreasing when you go from top to the bottom, because the valence electrons are very far from the nucleus, and then the Z effective is going to be a very small number. So Z effective is important. The question here is to calculate the Z effective for calcium and bromine. So calcium is 12 protons. 12 protons? What is, how many number calcium? Calcium, where is calcium? So magnesium and calcium. So it's going to be how many electrons for calcium, sir? We need to go and look into the periodic table for the total number of electrons for calcium. So if we are going to answer this question, we have to find out the total number of calcium and total number of bromine first. And because we know that total numbers of electrons and total number of protons are important, right? Uh, in order to calculate the Z effective, we need to know few things. We need to know the total number of protons, and we need to know the total number of core electrons. Okay, so I'm going to stop it here, and I will come back with the next phase of the video.